Alright guys, welcome back to the stream. Hopefully it'll be a little better this time. I was having some lag on my end. Maybe now things will be a little better. Okay, so the element is asking, Shepard, I got a question. I hope you can help me with it. I really love 3D and I'm learning it currently, but my drawing and painting skills are bad. Does that affect my chances when I'll be applying for a job? What do you think? Well, honestly, my drawing and painting skills are pretty bad as well. Most of the time, what I do doesn't really require any painting or drawing. Well, I take that back. Sometimes if I have to UV map something, then you can use Photoshop to paint in a texture, and sometimes that's not too difficult to do. But most of the time, I'm able to do 3D stuff, even though my drawing and painting skills are pretty bad. So unless you're specifically applying for a job that's going to require you to draw and paint, then yeah, it's probably going to affect it. But if you're like me and you can't draw and you can't paint and you're just doing 3D stuff mainly, then I don't see how it will affect you getting a job unless they're specifically asking for that kind of skill. But with most of the work that I do very little drawing, and most of the time it's just rough stuff. And the painting skills are basically just for UV mapping inside of Photoshop. Okay, let's try. I'm going to try different projections on this. I'm not really sure which one of these is going to work the best. Okay, you got it. All right, that's good. Yeah, drawing and painting, that's not really... I don't really know too many 3D guys that are doing drawing and painting. Most of the 3D guys I've worked with, they don't really draw or paint either unless it's Photoshop stuff. And even then, it's not anything too difficult to do. It's just painting in textures or, blocking in a texture or something for your 3D model. You like hard surface modeling. Yeah, it could be fun. Sometimes it can be a pain in the butt, though, when you have to do a lot of detail on little small parts. So where's that little piece at? There's a little tiny piece for some reason that's showing up. Where is that at? All right, let's do... No, that's not going to work. No, box. Yeah, that's not working either. I wonder if I went to a side view and did frontal and then relaxed it. Yeah, it kind of puts it on a bend there. Let's try a different method. Yeah, that's kind of messed up there in the corner. That's not working. Thanks a lot. Yeah, you're welcome. No problem. Okay, that's not going to work either. Let's go maybe to a world system. I wonder what that is right there. Where is that at? If I select that one, where's that one at? Oh, that would be the bottom? Why was the bottom selected? What if I just select that one instead? No, okay. So that's not going to work. I need to clear that. Make sure I didn't clear everything. Okay. I really wish Maxon would kind of update and improve their UV mapping tools, because right now body paint kind of sucks unless you're doing some pretty simple stuff. Otherwise, if you get into complicated surfaces, it kind of sucks. I need to clear that out. All right, let's try this again. All right, so cubic. Oh, okay, let's try to relax that now. Ah, there we go. All right, so that looks pretty good going down the line. Right there, that gets a little distorted. And now we've got a bunch of them. Okay, that's not going to work either. Kind of getting messed up around that corner. Maybe I'll just leave it the way it is for now. And nope, you got some right there that I kind of screwed up too. Press UW to select all connected items in UV Island. Yeah, I seriously need some help when it comes to body paint, because I only know just the very basics right now. So let's go back to try a different projection maybe. Cubic 2. Okay, let's see what this is doing. Relax. All right. This one actually looks a little bit better. All right, so maybe we'll just use that one for now. All right, let's see. Let's grab these and pull them here out of the way. We'll scale them up. So we can rotate them maybe a little bit here. So maybe that will work a little better. And I'm not really worried about, I wonder if that back piece even shows. I have no idea. Let's go find out. No, that doesn't even show up. Well, wait a minute. Does it show up over here? It shows up right there. Okay. Brazil and Bahamas. Well, welcome Brazil and Bahamas to the live stream. But I don't need the bottom. I'm just going to delete all of those off the bottom. I don't need it. Okay. So let's try, I don't know, where's my material at? Level 3. Okay, so let's make this texture, let's go with 4K, just to see how it works. And we'll name this level 3. right, and I think level 3 is already applied to level 3. No, it's not applied. Okay, level 3 to level 3. Okay. So back to this again. Layers. And we'll make... Destiny was the name of this project, right? Yes. Actually, Destiny was the name of the ship. That was the Destiny, the ancient ship from Stargate Universe. So let's make a UV mesh layer, but I don't want it to be white. I want it to be black. So mesh layer, and we'll create another new layer. And I'm going to get the brush tool, and the size needs to go up. The hardness needs to go up. That's a bit too much. Are you trying to paint on the UVs? What I'm trying to do is get the UVs laid out, because this is such an odd shaped object. The top portion of this is flat, and of course that's easy, so I just use frontal projection from a top view, and I've already got that lined up over here on the right hand side. You can see that in the UV island here, but it's got this little angled side portion right here with the bevel, with the subdivisions there in the bevel. And I wanted the texture to be seamless and flow underneath or over the top of that bevel and down the side. So I may have actually done this wrong. I may have probably, because I've got that long section there disconnected from the top. So I probably should have just done all of this in one big shot is what I should have done. Because I was going to take that into Photoshop and just paint the texture on top. So yeah, now that I think about it, it's probably better to just go back and redo some of this. So I'm going to delete those. And let's see, let's start over again with this. Mr. Walker 242, you're very welcome. I hope to have some more tutorials coming soon. I'm thinking about maybe making some more for V-Ray, because I recently had to do a big job with V-Ray, and I uncovered some more problems with V-Ray and the solution to it to fix it, but it increases render time. So maybe I can make a tutorial out of that. I don't know if you use V-Ray or not, but that's just one thing I was looking at doing. I'm actually thinking about switching from V-Ray over to Redshift, but we'll see how that goes. I don't know if I want to drop the money for Redshift right now. Okay, so I need to select all of those, and I just want to clear that for the moment. All right, let's try this again. So let's just select all of those except for the front and the rear. I don't need the rear at the moment. And we'll go to a top view. And let's see what happens. Redshift is amazing, definitely worth the money. That's what I keep hearing. There's one guy that I work with that he uses Redshift, and he keeps telling me, you got to get it, man. You got to get Redshift. The only issue with Redshift is that my machine that I'm currently using, it's only got one GPU in it. It's a Quadro M4000 is what I'm using. It's got 8 gigabytes of RAM on it. Now I do have Redshift. If you look up here at the top, I do have Redshift installed. It's the trial version. And it works okay with the Quadro, but from what I understand, it really shines when you throw in multiple GPUs. So if I move over to Redshift, that's probably what I'll have to invest in, is some more GPUs to add into my system. Okay, back to Destiny. Let's try a frontal projection, and let's see what happens if I can relax this. And I just want to make sure I have these polys selected. All right, so if I relax it, let's see what it looks like up close. Okay, that actually doesn't look all that bad. I just want to make sure that the bevel along that ridge that flows over the edge, I want to make sure that all of those elongated polygons are not crisscrossing each other. Okay, I think that's going to work. Yeah, all of those look really good along that edge. That's probably what I should have done in the first place. Okay, so those are selected, that's fine. Now I just want to scale them up. And that's way too much. Let's start down here and put it over here on this side somewhere. And we'll scale that up. To about right there, I think. I think it'll be all right. And the front polygon and also the rear. Now the rear's not really going to be seen, I don't think. Let me go back over here and unhide the rest of the ship. And this would be a little easier if I could just turn off textures. There we go. Okay, so there's the rear there. So only part of it is seen. I could probably cut part of that off, but that's all right, I'll leave it. And the front, why is the front right there? What has happened now to that? Yeah, this is what happens when you change up midway through a project. You end up with a bunch of errors. The node system is better too compared to V-Ray. Yeah, I have a little experience with the node system because that's what Arnold uses. And I was using Arnold for a little while with a few things, and I had to get used to that. I think I even put up a couple of tutorials. A couple of them were asking about Arnold and how to do that. And in the end, I decided, because Arnold uses the node system for its texturing, it would be best to just UV map the object and put the labels on rather than using the flat projection that you can use here in Cinema 4D with the default material system. But I haven't used Arnold in a while because, well, let's just be honest, Arnold is kind of slow. And if you take the sampling down, it's pretty fast, but of course it's grainy and noisy. But as soon as you take the sampling up, it's got some really good results to it, but it just takes forever to render. And some of these long animations that I've been doing here lately, one of them was about 3,000 frames long, and with V-Ray, it was about, I don't know, on average, anywhere between 5 to 10 minutes per frame with V-Ray. That was with motion blur enabled, and the settings were up pretty high because a lot of it contained a lot of diffused metal and aluminum. So I'm sure that Arnold probably would have taken even longer to render that out. All right, so why do I have two of these covered up here? Why is it doing that? Okay, what is going on? I need to be back in this mode. Oh, so why is there two of them? What is going on here? I think I've got some mesh errors that I need to fix before we actually go any further with this, because there's that piece, and those are all separate pieces. I have no idea how that happened. I heard Arnold was planning on doing a hybrid system with CPU, GPU in the future. That might be true. I really don't know. I haven't really used it in a while. It's been about, I don't know, about maybe 3 or 4 months since I last used it, somewhere around there. And I never really got around to updating it to the latest version or anything. The one that I have installed on here is it's an older version. Let's see, I have, what version do I have on here? Release notes about, no, that's not it. That's going to open up a window. Let's see. And why does that keep doing that? There we go. Okay, help and about. Okay, so I have Arnold C4D or Cinema 4D to Arnold. This is 2.1.0.1, or in the Arnold core is 5. I think it might be at 2.4 or 2.5 by now. I really don't know. I should probably look into it just to see what they've done, to see if they've made any improvements to it. Okay, so in the meantime, I've got to figure out what is going on here with my mesh. Okay, that's level 3. That's another level 3. Why do I have 2 level 3s? I need to connect all of these together is what I need to do. Actually, I think they are connected together. Let's see what happens if I were to just leave that one on. I don't remember doing that. Yeah, that's a little segment there. I don't remember making that like that. I thought it was one long piece. All right, well, anyway. This Destiny model is basically one gigantic symmetry. Basically, everything is in a symmetry object. And I have multiple symmetry objects on here. I've got one for the greebles, one for the rail cuts. I've got one for the hull plating, one for each level, because Destiny has multiple levels. Wow, I really need to get back to this and fix some of this stuff. You can see the first level is down here, then the second level, then the third level. And back here you have levels on top of that, which you have these two here. You have the observation deck, which is right here. And I don't have much inside of the observation deck at the moment. There's just a bench, some columns, and 2 seats and a table. So you can see just how much more I need to do on this before it's completed. Yeah, see, basically everything is split right down the middle. Well, almost everything. Anything that's not symmetrical, you can see off here to the side, like this big dome area. I don't even remember what that was called. I think it was the greenery where they were planting stuff in the show. I'm not sure, but you can see here the broken glass in the back with some of the hexagon stuff here that was broken and kind of messed up. But everything on this, the way that I modeled it, it was split right down the middle. And I just used symmetry, seeing as how most of the ship was pretty much symmetrical. Wow, I've got a lot of work still to do on this. All right, so I think I'm just going to put this on hold now. That's going to be a lot of work to do that. Let's see. What do you guys think I should do? Anybody else got any questions or anything? I figured I'd continue on this stream for maybe another 15 or 20 minutes, maybe. Maybe we can do a question and answer or something. In the meantime, I might as well just go ahead and fix some of these issues on here. Let's go back to the first level 3 and see if we can fix some of that. Yeah, yikes, that is a huge mess. Yeah, it really is. I have probably 29 or 30 different versions of this ship. Each one kind of went in a different direction with the method that I was used to modeling it. And in the end, this one right here that I have open, this is the one that I went with. But this is going to take some time to kind of like sort this out, because I didn't realize that a lot of these objects were broken up into multiple parts. Can you have the scene file? I have multiple scene files with this Destiny model. Some are back in the beginning when I first started with it, and each scene file kind of like progresses along the way, making updates to it and additional parts and stuff. I suppose I could part with one of the files. The only thing is, Most of those previous files don't have any textures or lights or anything on them. It's basically just the mesh. So I suppose I could part with one of them, but I'll need to go through them to see which one I want to part with. But this one here is the latest one that has most of everything on it. And I don't think I want to part with this one out right now. I'd like to get it fixed and fix some of these mesh problems and throw some textures on there and do some stuff with it, because this was something that I started back in 2000 and I don't know, does anybody know when this show first started? I think it was 2009 maybe. So that's when I first started this, and now here it is 2018, almost 10 years later, and you can see just how much progress I've made on it, barely anything at all. Okay, so I'm going to try to fix this one here. I went ahead and UV mapped it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create, let's see, where's my texture? Okay, it's got a texture on it. And I'm going to try to just create a temporary texture for it, open it up in Photoshop, and then throw it back on it just to see what it looks like. All right, so level 3 selected, texture selected. And I need to get, let's go with a black, and I want to make a mesh layer, and I'm going to make one more layer on this, and I'm going to grab the brush to paint, and I need to get another color. Let's go with green, why not? And let's just draw some doodles on here really quick to see how those are. Okay, so that's working. And we'll just kind of, I think what I want to do is, let's see how this looks going over the edge. Let's take the size down a little bit, and let's just see what this looks like going over the edge here. So if I were to make some zigzags on that one and this one here, let's make it look like something is kind of running over the edge a little bit maybe, or something. Like that. And this one here, we'll just make some swirls in there, and I just want to see what this is going to look like. I want to make sure that the UVs are looking okay going over the edge. Okay, that actually looks pretty good. All right, so let's try the bottom portion where the bend is at down here. Put one there and one there. I just want to make a little area just to test to see if this is looking right going over the subdivision bend. Okay, yep, that looks pretty good. Everything is lined up, because I know sometimes you can kind of run into some problems, and right along that area there, going from one polygon face through the subdivision bevel over to the other, you'll have a little break, and that texture will be offset slightly. So I just want to make sure that was lining up properly. Okay. All right, so now I just want to save that file. Oh yeah, see, here's the problem with it. The last time I worked on this, it was saved in R16, and it was using V-Ray 1.8. So now I'm in R18 with V-Ray 3.4. So of course, that's kind of why I've got issues going on here. All right, do you want to proceed? Yes, I want to proceed because I don't use R16 anymore. Do you want to save changes to the Destiny? Yes. Yeah, V-Ray 1.8. Yeah. I started using V-Ray. When did I start using V-Ray? It was back in, it wasn't even version 1. It was like 0.8 something, I think is what it was, is when I first started using it. And that's when there wasn't really a lot of information about it. Yeah, long time ago. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I started using it with 0.8, or maybe it was 0.7. And then me and another guy I was working for, we did this big job for Verizon Wireless. They wanted some interior shots, and the default GI system, the engine inside of Cinema 4D just wasn't giving us the looks that we were wanting. And Verizon, they thought it looked okay, but they wanted something more. So we went ahead and just bought V-Ray. And around that time, it was 1.1, and they were getting ready to go to 1.2. So around that time is when I started using it for most of my jobs. That was a long time ago. All right, so let's see. Let's open up. Let's see, which one of these do I want to do here? That is Destiny. There's the map there. Okay, so let's open up Photoshop. And I want level 3 is the one. All right, so let's see how this is going to work here. Can you guys still see the video stream okay? Because right now over here I'm just getting a bunch of lag on it, but I'm assuming that you guys can see the video okay. If you can't, just let me know. All right, so let's see, what are we doing here? All right, so this is I think I went with 4K. Yeah, this is 4K. Yes, okay, good. All right, so I'm gonna go get a texture, and I've got a bunch of hull textures here, and I'm not sure which one I want to use. Give me just a minute, guys. I got a text message coming in. Hang on just a second. Quality is really good, no lag at all. Okay, that's good to hear. Thank you for letting me know. Okay, now I'm back. Just every now and then I might get a text message, so if you guys don't hear me, just I'll be off to the side for just a moment. Okay, but I'm back now. All right, so I've got several CD collections worth of hull textures. A lot of them come off of the. I don't know if any of you guys ever remember. The website still might be there. I haven't checked in a while, but it's called 3D Total. I think was the name of it. They used to sell CD collections of textures, and I actually had some of them. One of them was a sci-fi texture collection, and I think some of these here are from that collection. Let's see, which one of these do I want to go with? I think I might want to go with that one, but I want to. Let's see, which one is it? This is the darker one, but I want to get those lines off of there. I don't want the lines. So let's see. Did I already take the lines off of that one? Somewhere around here I've got pre-made textures. I'm probably just going to have to find them. It's been so long since I have done any of this on Destiny. I kind of forgot where all of my textures are at. All right, let's just go with darker. And I'm just going to put this into a new one. And I'm going to paint some of this stuff out really quick. What are we using? I have Cinema 4D. Cinema 4D R18 open right now. And Photoshop. I'm just Photoshopping. Oh, what are we making? We are doing the Destiny. Hang on a minute. Let me unhide it. This is the Destiny ship from Stargate Universe. This is an ongoing project that's been going on for quite some time now, and I'm just now getting back to it. I decided to make it part of the live stream, which there's no way I'm going to finish it in this live stream. But this is just something I just wanted to quickly work on. And in a minute, I guess I can kind of switch over and show you guys some of the progress I've made on Atlantis. Because I actually went back and started doing Atlantis again, because my first model, which is some of the videos that I've uploaded a couple years ago on my channel, that was an older version of Atlantis, and I no longer use that one because I went back and decided to redo everything all over again. So now that I think about it, maybe I'll release that older version of Atlantis if anybody wants it. So, yes, I made all of it. Yes, all of the Destiny was done by me. All of this, yes, that's all mine. Let me change the display. There we go. That's a little better. I'm tired of seeing all those lines everywhere. So yes, I modeled all of this from scratch. It actually started with, let's see, where is the image at? I have an image here of Destiny that I used for the reference. And let's see, where is it at? These are all HD screen captures from the show that I used from years ago. There was one in particular that I used to start it off. I think that's it right there. Yeah. Okay, so this is a HD screenshot from the show. This was taken by somebody else. It wasn't by me, and they happened to share it online. And this is the shot that I grabbed. So what I did was I just, seeing as how this shot is almost a top view, you can see it's slightly off angled just a little bit. But you can see it's a top view. So basically I just took this into the top camera view in Cinema 4D. And I just traced the outline of it with a spline. And you can see here there are multiple decks and areas there. Each one looks a little different. And then I got a bunch of other screen captures here from the show. There's no need to go through all of them, but you can see some of them here. Shows all the detail. And that's what I used as a reference. And let's see, here's another shot here from the top that shows the ship. And that's basically all I used as a reference for it. And let's see, I think I might have some, oh, here we go, right here. This is the bottom of the ship. Somebody actually 3D printed this. I think this was the director. Bro, how long did it took you to use any plugin all for it? I think there was a couple of plugins that I used. Let's see. There was a plugin that I used here for one of the guns. Hang on a second. Let me turn the light off so I get the shading back. Okay. Right here on this gun, this is one of the cannons. Let's see. Where is this at? That's an instance. I don't want the instance. But anyway, down here on the bottom of this cannon, there is a gear system that's supposed to turn. And there's another cannon over here. You can see here that there's these little cog wheels on the bottom. So whenever this cannon, whenever it rotates and turns, these cog wheels will rotate with it. So there was a plugin that I was using with this to kind of help with all the gearing on all the mechanical parts when they move. But the developer of the plugin stopped development for it, and they were no longer making it, and it stopped around, I think, version 10 or 11 of Cinema 4D. I think it was release 11 or 11.5 when they stopped making it. And of course, those older plugins don't work with newer versions of Cinema 4D, so I had to get rid of that plugin since it no longer worked. And what I'm doing now is I had to go in and do a ton of espresso work to get this, to get the gearing to turn correctly, to get it to work, to set up all the little pistons. And let me see if I can actually find one real quick to show you what went into it. Let's see, where's another cannon at? Because a lot of these things are just instances. So the turret cannon, let's see if I can show in the manager. Where is it at? It's got to be around here somewhere. The turret. I got to find the turret. Let's see. It's somewhere in here. But anyway, most of this stuff is just instancing. So if I were to come in here and turn the instances off and just hide them, what is the name of the plugin? I don't remember the name of the plugin. Can you please tell me your shortcut keys, how you model? Basically, all of this was modeled, hard surface polygon modeling, basically, from the top view of that picture I showed you. I used the top view picture like this, and just used a bunch of splines. A lot of these levels are, that would be a spline inside of an extrude NURB, and then you just make the extrude NURB editable, and then you can just move around the bottom portion to scale it, use the bevel tool to bevel the edges. And a lot of this stuff was just modeled by hand. Like, for example, this little tower piece here, that was modeled, let's see, render view. That was modeled with a cylinder, just spending time going in and making extrusions and stuff. But most of it was just by hand, just using basic primitive objects and going in and just... oh, I forgot I had the textures turned on. But most of it was just primitive based modeling is what it was. What is the polygon count? The polygon count for this, let's see, where would be my, let's see, project. Where is the, I think what I want, let's go back over here to, let's try, let's do that one there. All right, so the polygon count for this will be, that is a total of 1.7 million polys. So that, yeah, 789,000, okay. Yeah, so 1.7, but that is with the symmetry objects turned off. So let me turn symmetry back on really quick. Let me go through here and see if I can turn all those back on. Level, level. Greebles, bottom greebles, everything is basically in symmetry. Okay, so we'll go back to object, project information. Okay, so the polygon count jumped up to 3.5 million. Control plus I. Yeah, you're right, it is Control plus I. I'm so used to going up here to objects and then either object information or project. But yeah, project information is Control I, and object information, I don't think that has a shortcut to it. I don't think that's coming up. It's not giving me anything down here on the bottom. Bro, is there something better than Turbulence FD in Cinema 4D? As far as I know, right now, Turbulence FD has, let's see, what's the name of that? X Particles. The latest version of X Particles has fluid and smoke and fire simulation in it. But I forgot the name of it. I forgot the name of that part of X Particles. But I don't have X Particles. I used to have an older version. I believe it was version 2. But I never got around to upgrading to the latest version, which is because I do very little particle work. So I don't see the need to actually drop funds right now on X Particles. But if you're looking to do fire and smoke, then I would say go for X Particles or Turbulence FD. Those are the only two options that I know of, unless you want to get Real Flow. But I don't think Real Flow does fire and smoke. I think Real Flow is basically just for water and wet maps. Like Fume FX, yes. Fume FX is pretty good. I think that's for 3D Studio Max, isn't it? That's a pretty good plugin. I wish that was something that was available for Cinema 4D. I've seen a lot of cool things done with Fume FX. Okay, let's go over here to Material Override. Okay, so let's see if there's anything hidden here. Mid greebles. Okay, let's just render this really quick with the materials off and just see what it looks like. TFD currently does better fire and smoke than X Particles in my opinion. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking as well, because I've been using TFD for quite some time and I saw I don't know, I think it was a reel video. Someone made a reel and it was showing some of the X particle work that they did with fire and smoke. And while it looked okay, I think it still needs a little bit of fine tuning and work before it catches up to TFD. That's just my opinion though. But then again, I've been using TFD since the beginning stages of it, when the guy first started releasing versions of the plugin. What render do I use for production? Right now for production, I'm using V-Ray for Cinema 4D. My clients just seem to like that look. I was using the default render, which is the standard render engine. I was kind of switching between standard and physical, but some of my clients, while they did like the standard Cinema 4D look and some of the GI stuff, they wanted something that looked something a little more real. They were looking for more realism. So I decided to continue on with V-Ray because I've had it for such a long time. But the problem is that V-Ray just, it's kind of slow and it has a couple of drawbacks, especially with animation, because there's a lot of secondary ray issues with noisy metal, and you have to kind of play around with some of the settings in it, some of the anti-aliasing settings and the denoiser in order to get rid of those. So even though there's problems with it, I still went back to using it. My clients really seem to like the look of V-Ray, but the longer render times, I guess they don't mind because, you tell them, hey, it's going to take a little longer to render, and they don't care. But right now, that's what I use for production is V-Ray. But let's see. V-Ray is very complex than Octane. So are you saying that Octane is easier to use compared to V-Ray? Octane is not good in my opinion. I've never used Octane. I've never even had the trial version of it. I don't know, did they make a trial version of it? I never actually got around to trying it out. I saw some pretty good results with it though, but at the time, when V-Ray, I'm sorry, not V-Ray, but when Octane started coming around real heavily and people started using it, my machine, I had a very low-end GPU in my machine. It was let's see, what was it? It was a GeForce GTX 560 Ti, and it only had 1 gig of RAM on it. So there was no way I was going to be able to do much as far as Octane with GPU rendering and stuff. But now since I've got a Quadro with 8 gigs of RAM on it, I could probably give Octane a try. But I was kind of thinking more along the lines of maybe using Redshift. One of the guys that I work with uses Redshift. And some of the projects that we work on together, he keeps telling me, you got to go to Redshift. You got to go to Redshift. So if I go to a GPU render, it's probably going to be Redshift. Octane just works on NVIDIA. Yeah, that's right, because it uses CUDA, I think. And right now, AMD doesn't have any of that going on with them. I think they're using OpenCL. I think that's what AMD uses. And some of these GPU engines, they don't have the OpenCL support for them going right now. So everything right now is CUDA and NVIDIA. Can I show the process of texturing material stuff? Okay, what kind of material stuff do you want me to show? And Flavio, Redshift is life. I would stop using C4D, but Redshift never. I really need to use Redshift. Yeah, I have it installed on here. It's the trial version, but I really need to find some training material on it and familiarize myself with it because I have very little experience when it comes to Redshift. My experience right now for the last few years has been with V-Ray because that seems to be what my clients like, but I really need to, I probably need to move over to Redshift. Okay, so the whole ship. Okay, so you want me to show you the texturing for the whole ship. Okay, so here is what I did. Let me go back in here and turn on textures, and hopefully it'll show up. That's another issue dealing with V-Ray. One of many issues when dealing with V-Ray is that sometimes if you turn off the textures here for the viewport, and it just gives you the grayscale, and you go back to enable textures, sometimes those textures will not show up in the viewport. You have to save the file, close it out, and then reopen the file again, and then the textures will appear. And sometimes that could be a huge pain in the butt. But they seem to be working okay right now. In my opinion, what is easier render to use? I only have experience right now with the standard Cinema 4D render, with V-Ray, and with Arnold. And what I've learned, for example, with Arnold, your best bet is to do UV mapping if you want to do any type of complex textures or labeling or anything. But the problem with Arnold is that it takes forever to render, because I think Arnold is a sample-based render engine. So you have to really turn up the samples to get it to look good. Otherwise, it comes out very grainy and very noisy. Let's see. Maybe I have something here that I can open up in Arnold in a minute to show you guys. I think I have a couple of scene files maybe floating around somewhere. But other than Arnold and the standard, V-Ray is what I've been using for the last couple of years for most everything. And it's got some problems with it, like I said, but let's see. I don't know how to UV map. It's very confusing. Yeah, UV mapping can be confusing. Basically, you have to lay out the UVs, but you have to switch over your layout here over to UV edit. And once you do that, you have to kind of go through and lay out your UVs, and then you save that as one giant UV map. And then you can take that UV map into Photoshop and then paint the textures on the polygons where they're at, and then just apply that in UVW mapping on the texture here. Let's see, if you click on the texture and then the projection, you'll bring that over to UVW mapping. And then everything will be in place. But for something like this with the Destiny, I used cubic. And that's, using cubic mapping, that's just a very quick and dirty way of throwing on a texture, because I have these seamless textures here for the hull, and you can see what they look like. And basically, I think it's 1024 by 1024, and I made a material and I threw it on in cubic mapping mode. And that's basically what I did for this whole entire ship. Everything is done with cubic mapping. And if I were to just render this really quick, let's see if we can you can see some of the cubic mapping here on the front. Let me make sure I've got V-Ray set up here. Material override would turn that off. All right, so I'm going to render this really quick. And yeah, so basically everything is cubic mapping. All right, so hang on a second. Let me see if I can make this a little brighter. I don't know if you guys can see the dark side. Let me go into the V-Ray light here for a moment. And let me take this up a little bit here. And see if I can get this to be a little brighter so you can see it. It's kind of dark on my screen here. Yes, you can see. Okay. How to randomize textures and something like procedural texturing. Can you show me? Procedural texturing, that would probably be something better for a tutorial. It would probably take me a while to show you all the tricks on how to do that. Basically, you're just using a bunch of noise. So if you were to go and make a new material in the color channel, and let me expand this window for a minute. So in the color channel, basically what you want to do is you want to create a layer, and this layer shader acts like a Photoshop layer. So you click on the layer and you go in, and it gives you the ability to add an image or a shader or an effect. So let's just add a shader. So let's go in and add some noise. Okay, so there's your base noise. And we want to add another shader, so we'll add some more noise. And this noise, you'll click on it, and we want to change this over to, I don't know, maybe turbulence maybe. But let's take the global scale up with the turbulence, and let's play around with the low and high clip to darken it up a bit. Something like that. And then you'll go back, and this is the transfer mode. So all you have to do is just play around with the transfer mode, overlay, screen, and you can mix and match all of these different types of noises. And you can also add an image if you have a JPEG image or a PNG image or whatever. That's basically procedural noises, and that's how you would do that. No problem. I will wait for your tutorial. Okay, yeah, I think that's probably best left for a tutorial because there's a lot of information to go over when dealing with that. Okay, so let's go. I'll tell you what, let's go inside of the observation deck and let's look out here and see how this looks from back here. And I'll render that really quick. All right, so obviously you can see that some of these interior objects here, you can see there's a lot of grain on that. So let me, first of all, see, this is an issue with V-Ray, is that one of the drawbacks is grain. That's one of its weak points. So let me find the chair, observation deck, and let me turn that on for those two chairs. You really match so much of it really well, like that view from the observation deck. Thank you. You have no idea how much time I spent on trying to get this thing to look right. I think there's even a video on my YouTube channel here where there's just a very quick animation of the camera walking through the observation deck looking around. But that was not rendered with V-Ray. That was, I think that was just rendered with some standard lighting inside of Cinema 4D here. Okay, so if I were to go over here to these chairs and render that. Just give it a minute to calculate. Okay, so for example, I'm using the V-Ray physical sky for this. That's the only light in the scene other than maybe a couple of lights that I'm using along the hull somewhere, but those should be turned off. So let's see, the light here, I'm using the clear sky preset on it. I've just kind of tuned down some of these settings for the illumination for the physical camera because I have a physical camera tag on the camera. And if I go in here to the anti-aliasing, I'm using the bucket for the sampler type. And right now the sampling for the min and max for the anti-aliasing is 1/4. So that's probably why it's grainy. So if I were to take this up to something like 12 and just render a little region where these chairs are at, you can see taking the subdivision up on the max, it does help, but there's probably going to be some areas where it's still grainy. Okay, so you can see it's taking a little longer to render this time. And you can see the quality looks a little better compared to where it was, but even with the max count on the subdivision is 12, you can see there's still a lot of grain in there, especially right here on the front of this chair. You can see there's a lot of grain in there and that looks kind of nasty. So you might think, okay, well, let's take the subdivision count up here for the max. So let's take it up to something like 24. And I'm just going to render the front portion there of that chair. Is i5 and 2 GTX 1080s are good for Redshift? I don't really know because all I have is a Quadro M4000 that I'm using, and it seems to work. But I think the more GPUs you throw at Redshift, the quicker it'll be. So if you've got two 1080s in there, I think that'll be pretty good. Okay, so taking the subdivision count up to 24, it improves slightly, but you can see there's still some grain there on the front side of that chair. So this is where you have to start playing with the minimum shading rate. So if we were to take this up to, I don't know, we'll take it up to 16, and we'll take the subdivision count back down to 12 and render the front portion again. It should be better than what it was. Why grain occurs? Yeah, grain is just part of V-Ray. It's an unfortunate issue. That's just one of the downsides of using V-Ray. You have to really crank up the settings. Okay, so it's still there. So we have to take, and let's take this back up to 24. And I don't think, let's see, maybe the light has a parameter for shadows. Shadow subdivision is 8, but I don't think that this shadow subdivision counts for the indirect shadows, because right now the shadow on the front of that chair is not getting struck by the light. It's actually an indirect shadow, so I don't think that's going to work. So let's try this again with the max back up at 24. More than likely, probably what I need to do to improve this is I need to add some lights on the inside of the observation deck. Right now, the only light in the scene would be the outside light, which it's using the sky for illumination, also plus the sun object that's enabled for the physical sky. So I'm pretty sure that if I were to throw in some more lights, like some interior ceiling lights or wall lights, inside of this observation deck, it would probably improve it a lot. But you can see just how much improvement it made on the front of that chair just by taking the count up to 24 and the minimum shading rate up to 16. Also, V-Ray has a denoiser. So if you were to go into the V-Ray multipass settings, it has a denoise channel. And if you go to Render Elements, Special Channel, Denoiser, and you can go through the settings here and play around with that, and sometimes this denoiser will actually help. You don't have to have these settings up so high. The denoiser will go through and clean up a lot of the noise, but then again, I would not rely heavily on that denoiser too much. It's not a a miracle working solution. But in the case of something like this, it could probably make an improvement where these settings over here could probably come down. Can we make Stormy Rain with Cinema 4D? Stormy Rain. What do you mean by stormy rain? Do you mean like actual rain falling from the sky and clouds and wind and all that? I'm not sure what you mean by stormy rain. If your camera is going to be still, yes. Okay. If your camera is going to be moving through your stormy rain scene, then you're going to want some parallax, and you're going to want to have that depth feeling. Yeah, heavy rain. Okay. More than likely, if you're going to want to do heavy rain, you're probably going to want a particle plugin like X Particles. And the reason why I say X particles is because Cinema 4D does have its own particle system. But the problem with Cinema 4D's particle system is that it is single threaded. So what that means is, you know, if you have a machine like an i7 or something and you've got like 6 cores or 12 cores or however many cores you've got, you could have a dual Xeon system. Only one of those cores is going to work to calculate those particles. As far as I know, Maxon has not done any more development on their particle system. However, X Particles is multi-threaded. X Particles is very fast with the particles compared to the default Cinema 4D, which I kind of forgot the name of what the particle system in here was called. Let's see. If I were to go into, let's see, where is my new node? Oh, Thinking Particles, that's what it is. So yeah, Thinking Particles is Cinema 4D's standard default particle engine. And unless they've changed something in the last couple of releases, it is single threaded and it can be slow. So if you want to make a heavy rain scene and your camera's going to be moving around, yeah, trust me, you do not want to be using Thinking Particles for that. My suggestion to you is to take a look at X Particles, and maybe that is what you're going to be wanting. All right, so it looks like I've got a lot of work cut out for me for the Destiny. I was hoping that during this live stream I could kind of come in here and do some more on it, but I need to kind of clean up some of the mesh here at the front because I did not realize that it was split off into so many parts like that, like down here at the front. Yeah, okay, so I'm going to have to go through here and kind of clean some of this up before I move on with the texturing. What release am I using? I'm currently using R18. I haven't upgraded since R18, that's what I'm using. I know that they recently just came out with R20. But I don't really know if there's anything inside of R20 that would be worth upgrading to. I really don't know. I should probably look into it to see if there's anything that R20 has versus R18 that would be useful to me with what I do. Will you upgrade to R20? I really don't know. I might. Right now, everything that I do for my clients, the modeling, the UV mapping, well, the minimal UV mapping that I do, and all the rendering, I can do all of it right here inside of R18 with V-Ray. So unless something new comes around that I need to get that R20 has, then I'm probably just going to stick with R18 for now. R20 is best for motion designer. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. The node system. Does R20 have a node system? The only node system that I'm aware of would be for Espresso. Okay, so R20 has a node system. All right, well, I didn't know that. I'll have to look into that to see what that's about. Would that be for textures? Like for the material system, is that what it is? It's a node-based system, kind of like Octane, Redshift, and no material nodes. Yes, okay. Oh, they finally came up with the native node system, a nodal system. Okay, it is very cool. Okay, all right. Well, I'll have to check that out then, because right now I'm in R18, and of course R18 has the this material system that we've all come to know since the beginning. So it is mind-blowing. Okay, well, I may have to check that out then. The only thing that I saw, I watched Maxon's live stream from, what was that last conference that they had? Was it SIGGRAPH or something? Or one of those latest conferences they were at where they were showing R20? And the only part of the live stream that I caught was the MoGraph's got a new field system, I think, or something. That's the part that I caught. MoGraph has a new field system. Yeah, a week ago. Yeah, I only caught part of their live stream. And the part that I saw was MoGraph and the fields. There's different fields you can use or something. That's basically all I caught out of it. So, well, now since you guys were mentioning it, yeah, I may have to look into R20. I'll have to check that out later and see if it's worth looking into. Because it seems like, excuse me, it seems like a lot of these new things are going to a node-based material system for textures. I know that Arnold uses it. Let me see if I have any Arnold files that that I can open up and take a look at here. Maybe I can find something in Arnold. I used to have something, a collection of files that just kind of playing around with in Arnold. I may not be able to find them. Okay, somebody has a request. Please make a robot and animate it. Oh boy. Okay, well, what kind of robot do you want to make? Because that takes a long time to set up all the parts, and then you have to decide how you want to rig it. You can rig it with constraints like Iron Man. Oh boy. Yeah, that's modeling and rigging an Iron Man type robot. That would probably be a 10 or 20 part tutorial series. That would be hours and hours worth of video tutorials on how to do that. Yeah, from basic to advanced. Yeah, if I were to make something like that, I would probably have to charge for it because you're looking at about, I'm going to guess maybe 20 parts, each part maybe an hour long, and that is a lot of time to spend on something to give it away for free. So that would be something that would take a while to do because, I mean, there is a lot going on there because you have to model it. And you have to learn how to do ahead of time on how to model it, because if your parts are going to be interacting with each other, like if you've got an elbow and an arm joint, and that elbow joint is going to be rotating to make the forearm rotate back and forth, well, you have to make sure that your metal exoskeleton pieces of the robot are not going to be intersecting for each other. So, I mean, there's a whole lot of planning that has to go into that. I would love to pay for this. If you ever make it, I will pay for this. Okay, well, maybe. I don't know right now, but you guys have given me something to think about. So, maybe. I'm not really sure if I'll do it or not. What is the method of payment? It'll probably be just, if I were to do something like that, it would probably be PayPal with a digital download. I think that's what a lot of people are doing nowadays is just... you pay with PayPal, and then you get a download link, and then you can go download all the parts, which I'm assuming for a 10 or 20 part video series in 1080p, that's probably going to be a couple of gigabytes worth of download for you. So I'm not really sure if I'll do it, but maybe that's something that we can look into, maybe. Going to be a lot of time put into something like that. Okay, so you're from Pakistan. There is no PayPal, but we have Pioneer like PayPal. Okay, I don't know what Pioneer is, but I'll have to look into that to see if that's something that I can do. But most of the time, people just pay me with PayPal for, you know, if I do anything overseas, I tend to use PayPal. That's what a lot of people pay me with. Unless it's here in the States, which... a lot of my clients that I do regular reoccurring work for, they just do like direct deposit and things like that. But most of the time overseas work, it's PayPal. Yeah, that's a lot of work if there are only a few people buying it. Yeah, exactly. I would hate to spend all those hours putting together and producing a series and only 15 or 20 people buy it. I don't know if that would be worth it or not. We are desperate to learn. Are there no free tutorials on YouTube about that? On robot and robot rigging, mechanical rigging, and things like that? I thought I saw one at one time. I don't know. Maybe it was on another video page or something. But I thought maybe YouTube might have something like that. There is not. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to try. Meanwhile, I'm reading the chat. Look up Airbus 3D. Yeah, I think that might be one of the channels that I saw with some of that. In the meantime, I'm just going to see if I can find some of these Arnold files. I know that there's nothing going on here in the viewport at the minute. I'm just kind of looking on another monitor to see if I can find some of my Arnold files here. Oh, I've got a ton of stuff here, a ton of files for different render engines and stuff that I've collected over the years. Let's see if I can find something really quick here. Let's go to... at one time I had a bunch of Lego files. There was this really cool Lego software that you could download. It was free. And you could build Legos, and then you could export that over to OBJ or FBX. And I imported a bunch of Lego files over into Cinema 4D, and I was just playing around one day with just a bunch of Legos. And I rendered an airport scene inside of Arnold. That's what I'm trying to find. I'll pull that up for you guys if you want to take a look at it. You'll have to give me a minute to find it. Yes, Arnold is very slow. Yes, I agree. Arnold is very slow. If you want fast renders, you got to take the sampling rate on it down, and then the renders come out really grainy and dirty and noisy. Lego stuff. Lego creations. Let's see if I can find some of my Arnold files here. Here we go. Airport, that might be it. I don't know. Okay, let's see what this does. I'm going to try to open up a file here. Okay, so this is one of the Legos. Let me know if you guys can see this okay or not. This is one of the Lego files that I put together and I found from one of the Lego creator programs. I forgot the name of it. But this is all rendered inside of Arnold. So let's go up here to the render settings, Arnold Render. And the way Arnold Render works is it's got different tags you can place on different objects like the camera, and it gives you the exposure and the depth of field and things like that. And let's see, where is my light? I have a light in here somewhere. Okay, Arnold Sky is what I'm using. And let's see, where is... Okay, samples is set to 1. So basically the way Arnold Render works is in the render settings, you've got camera, diffuse, specular, transmission, subsurface scattering, volumetrics, and by default, these are what the settings are set to as far as the sampling goes. So if I were to just render this really quick with these default settings, and I'm just going to render this viewport here for a moment. Okay, so there's Arnold. Now I had let's see, in the camera, I think I have, okay, I've got depth of field enabled. I'm just going to turn that off really quick. Go back and render it again. Okay, so there is a render with low settings with the Arnold physical sky. And, you know, it doesn't really look all that bad. You can see in some of the areas here, there's a little bit of noise going on. If I were to turn on the depth of field and render it again, you can see in the distance the helicopter and the plane that is almost inverted. they're kind of blurred out at the moment. But you can see the blur coming from the depth of field is very noisy and very grainy right now. So in order to smooth that out, you have to take the camera anti-aliasing sample here, and you have to take that up. So if I take that to 10 and render it again, it's probably going to take a little longer to render now. Can you guys see this as it's rendering? I don't know if my system being under a load will cause the live stream to skip or pause or something during the rendering. Let me know if you can see this as it's rendering. Okay, you can see it. Okay, that's good. All right, so that took, let's see, that took 47 seconds to render that. And you can see it looks better, but there are some areas like right back here behind this guy where the ground blends into the grass, that is still rather noisy. So sometimes you have to take the camera sampling up even more because this slider, it appears it only goes up to 10, but it actually goes beyond that. You just have to type in a value to take it up. So if I were to go, let's just go to 16. And if I were to render that little area back there again. Okay, so you can see it's making an improvement on that. Still kind of noisy though, so I'm going to take this up to a value of 24. And then I'll just render the whole viewport here. And it should look good. Now this scene, however, is very simple. The material in here is very simple. There's nothing in here, I don't think, that has any reflections or diffused reflections to it or anything like that. This is a really basic scene. The only thing really is just the depth of field. That's the only thing that would slow it down. But you can see now with the camera sampling set up to 24, you can see now with the helicopter in the background in that plane on its side, you can see that now it's starting to take a while to render this. And this is the slow part of Arnold when you have to do with this type of stuff, especially with anything that's volumetric. I'll see if I can find a volumetric scene that I have to show you some of that as well. Because the volumetrics look really good inside of Arnold. But the problem is that they're very grainy. So in order to get a really nice, smooth, volumetric scene, you really have to ramp up the volume and the camera anti-aliasing sampling. And then it just takes forever to get it to render. So you can see we're at 1 minute and 25 seconds, and it's still rendering. It hasn't even made it past the helicopter and the plane yet. Yeah, Arnold for animations, I haven't really tried it just because the still images that I've rendered, they have taken way too long. I mean, it's just my opinion saying way too long, but I mean, for something like this, if I wanted to set up an animation with this, you can see just how long it's taking just for this still image. I should probably do a comparison with this same identical scene between Arnold and V-Ray to try to get the same look and the same smooth effect with the depth of field and see which one takes longer to render. But from what I hear from other users, Arnold is very slow when it comes to this kind of stuff. It takes forever with animation. As far as I can remember, there was a movie that came out a few years ago. It was called Gravity. Do you guys remember that? I think it had Sandra Bullock and George Clooney in it, and it was about them. They were out in space. The space shuttle got tore up, and they were out floating around. She was the sole survivor. Had to go to the space station and then come back. Well, that whole entire movie, all of the space scenes in it, the space station, the interior of the space station, all of that was all 3D, and it was rendered with Arnold. Or at least I know most of the movie was rendered with Arnold, and I honestly don't know how they did it. They must have had a huge render farm chugging along all day long on all of those frames, because the quality of the movie I thought looked pretty good. And if it was done with Arnold, I can only imagine they must have had a huge farm to render that out. There was even a little breakdown video online that someone put out a few years ago. It was the guy that modeled all the interior for the space station, and he said it took him 3 months modeling every day nonstop to model the inside of the space station for all of those interior shots that they did. All right, so we're going on 4 minutes almost. So, okay, so there's 4 minutes, and you can see it's still not done, but you can see the results looks much better. The depth of field in the background looks good. The plane and the helicopter are no longer grainy and blurry. I mean, they're blurry, but they don't have any more noise in them. And the little spot right behind the guy in blue now looks nice and smooth. It's not noisy like it was. All right, so it took a total of 4 minutes and 19 seconds to render that out. And that was with the camera setting up here at 24. But we could take this down to a default value of 2, I think is what it is. And this goes really quick now. You can see just how quick that rendered, but you can see the quality of what it looks like. It looks like crap. Now the Arnold Material system, let me create a new Arnold surface, standard surface. Okay, so this is what the material looks like for Arnold. So basically you have to create the new Arnold material down there. You can double click it to open it up. And this is very basic controls over the Arnold material right here, like the color, that's the base, the specular, transmission, all of these things here. You can control them from here, and it's very basic. But if you want to go beyond basic, you have to open up the network editor. And now it looks like Espresso. So this is the standard surface material that we just created. This is it right here. And if you click on the node, the parameters for it will come up over here on the right. So you've got your weight, your color, your diffused roughness, your metalness. You've got specular, which right now is set to 1, which you can see the specular is on there 1. It's a nice, clear, glossy reflection on the preview. Let's see, the roughness is set to 1. Let's see, if we were to bring that down to 0, let's see, where do I want to go? I think what I'm looking for is, okay, so the roughness here for the specular would be like a diffused or a blurry type of reflection. So if I were to take the index of refraction up to say 3, okay, there we go. Now the preview, now I can see it a little better. So if we were to bring this down to something like 0.3, okay, yeah, that just blurs the reflection. And then over here on the left-hand side, you've got all your different types of nodes. For example, if we wanted to do a texture, you've got your image node. So you would have to drag in your image node. And what that does is you have to find an image, or you can just click it there like that and then go over to image attributes. So here you would find your image. You could go through all of these different parameters here, UVW coordinates, although if you've watched some of those tutorials that I did on applying labels using Arnold and how in the world do you do that, a lot of people were telling me to use the UVW tag or the UVW node in order to go in there to set that up, to position it. But I found that that is a huge pain in the butt to do it that way. It's best to just UV map your model and then just come in here and use the UV map texture in the image node. and then you would just link that over in here to your base color. And of course right now it's black, that's why the preview up here is black, but that's how you would do that. Otherwise, you're going to be sitting around here playing around with, I think it is the UV transform. Yeah, so if you were to drag that in here, you have to run your image through the UV transform node, and then out of the transform node up here, and then you have to play around with all of the different parameters here for that. And like I said, that's a huge pain in the butt to do. I must have spent several hours trying to get that to work right. Very annoying. I don't recommend it. So if you've got labeling to apply to something and you're using Arnold, definitely UV map it. So that's the material editor inside of Arnold. Let's see. I think I might have, let me see if I've got something else really quick. I think I may have one more here. I was going to try to set up or try to show one of the volumetrics to show what the volumetrics look like on it. Let me see if I can find one really quick here. So while I'm looking, what time is it where you guys are at? Because I'm on the East Coast and it is going on 11:30 at night here. Let's see here. What do I got? I've got... see if I can find it. 8:26 a.m. Haven't slept. Yeah, man, you got to get some sleep. Okay, so it's going to take me a while to find this scene file, but in the meantime, I can actually show you a render of what it looks like. Let me get this up. Okay, so this here is a render I did with Arnold. This was done using volumetrics, which is like an atmosphere, like the volume. I forgot what that's called. Let me go look it up real quick. That would be Arnold Atmosphere, I think is what it is. But I know that down here, let's see, where is it at? Environment. Okay, so here it is here. Okay, so in the main render settings for Arnold, you've got your environment tab and you've got background and you got atmosphere. So for the atmosphere, what you would do is take your fog shader and then drag that into here. And you have to kind of play around with it. You got to set your lights up correctly. And the thing that I created, I was just kind of playing around with it with something like this. So basically, this is just a sweep NURB following a spline through the trees. And I've got the grass and everything here. I've got all of these trees. And there's only two lights in the scene. There's the light coming from the luminant material on the sweep NURB going through the trees here. And there's also an area light way off in the background, kind of like, I guess you could say like a flood lamp pointing up from the ground up into the sky. And it's illuminating the fog in the scene here. So those are the only two lights in the scene. But something like this, you can see there's some grain in the fog a little bit. And down here, like underneath the tree on the left-hand side, bottom corner, there's some grain there. And every now and then you can kind of pick up on it. I don't remember what the render settings were, but it took, I think it took probably about 15 minutes to render this image out right here the way it is. And you can see it still needs some improvements. Let's see. What is, yeah, okay, so that's the default size of it. Do I use Forester? No, I don't use Forester. Forester is something I might look into in the future because I saw some stuff done with it and it looked pretty cool. But for something like this, a couple of years ago, I got one of the tree and plant CDs from, forgot the name of it. There is a company that makes different interior and exterior shots for V-Ray and different 3ds Max users and stuff like that. I forgot the name of it. What's the name of that? Let me look it up real quick. I think it's called Arc Interiors. Evermotion, that's it. Okay, so there's a company called Evermotion, and at one time they had a bunch of CDs that they were selling, or actually I think it was digital downloads with a bunch of plants and trees and grass and flowers and all kinds of different stuff. So I have a rather large collection of a bunch of different trees that I got from their collection. So that's what I used for that interior or that exterior shot with the fog. So anytime I have any type of exterior shot that needs trees, I just use the 3D model from that collection. Yes, I used a 3D model. Okay, so let's see, what else can I get into here? I'm going to go ahead and close that out. And I'm going to go ahead and close this out. When it comes to Destiny, I'm really going to have to spend some time on fixing those mesh errors. I didn't realize it was like that, so that's something I'm going to have to do. But in the meantime, maybe there's one more I can open up because it's getting late, and I'm sure you guys are probably getting sleepy, so I'll probably end the live stream here in a few minutes. Let me see if I can find... let's see. Okay, so this is something that I did with Arnold. This is Airbus A320 Throttle Quadrant. I don't know if any of you guys are pilots, but I've always wanted to make one of these for some reason. I have no idea why, but I thought it was pretty cool. So all of this was modeled from scratch, and this is rendered with Arnold. But this is when I learned that I'm going to have to start UV mapping things when I start doing this with Arnold. So these, the throttle quadrant here in the middle, the throttle for both of the engines, and all of these little lines and all this stuff along here, that was UV mapped. So basically everything you see here, all of it was UV mapped. It had to be UV mapped because Arnold doesn't allow you to do flat projection or anything like that. So this was all UV mapped. There's a shot there from the top. This was all done, again, all done in Arnold. This was using a luminant material here on some of these flight controls. Oh, okay, so you're a pilot, but just for a Cessna. Okay, well, no, I mean, that's still pretty cool. I mean, I don't know how to fly, but I kind of wanted to learn how to, like, maybe fly a helicopter one day or something, but I was watching some Airbus videos a while back, and I thought about maybe doing something from inside of the cockpit, and I saw the throttle quadrant, and I said, well, okay, I want to do that. How do you make this impossible for you? Okay, well, I just modeled all of this. Basically, I went online and I found some, I guess you can call them orthographic style images of all of these different panels. So if we view the actual size here, so you got all of these different panels for the radio. You got all of these panels up here for the switches. And basically, I just use the orthographic image to trace it with a spline and then put that into an extrude NURB. And then those extrude NURBs make up all the paneling. And then I had to UV map from a top view using frontal projection. I had to UV map all of these panels, and then I just applied all of these labels inside of Photoshop. Do you have an art station or anywhere else that you post your work or renders? I don't have an art station, but I do have a, what's the name of that site? I do have a Behance and a DeviantArt. So hang on just a second. Let me pull up my Behance. Let me see if I can find it really quick here. Okay, so let me know if you guys can see this. This is my Behance. I think that's how that's pronounced, Behance. Some of my artwork is on here. Sometimes I'm not allowed to post some of the jobs that I do right away because I have to sign a non-disclosure agreement, which means that I'm not allowed to post any of the artwork. I can't post any of the models or any of the renders, at least for a certain amount of time, until the product has had its release date. And then afterwards, maybe then I can start putting up some of the work. But you can go to, it's behance.net/NASAShaneBFA6. I really need to kind of change my name up there on the web address. Yes, I can. Let me copy that. All right, so I just shared it in the chat. That is to my Behance, and that shows some of the artwork and stuff that I've done. At least there's a Blue Yeti mic. I had to model all of that. The Pixar Playhouse, Space Shuttle, the server room with all the servers, some of the phones that I've done. Let's see. Have I made mobile motherboard or chips? Okay. Yes, I have done some of the stuff. For example, let's see, what should I show to show that? Okay, so a lot of the work that I've done recently is like for a computer company here in the States called Box. I've done a lot of their notebooks and a lot of the internal parts of some of their workstations like motherboards, GPUs, and some of their rendering units. This here was one of their latest things that I did, one of their notebooks that they recently released. And this was just to showcase some of the assets that I put in the scene. All of these I had to model. I couldn't find any of these things online, so I decided to just go ahead and model them and just kind of threw them here inside of the scene with the notebook. Was this CAD or all sub-D modeled? Okay, for the notebook here in this scene, which I'm assuming that's what you're talking about, for the notebook, some of it was subdivision surface modeled. It was sub-D, and the other parts was just random splines and NURBs and stuff, and some hard surface modeling. But all of these gears, for all of the gears that you see here, like this gearing stuff here, like these long shafts with the gears and the teeth on them, that was just a cylinder that I made some gears on with some extrusions. This little bearing that sits inside of this clamp device here, or whatever that is, that was done using subdivision surface modeling. Yeah, like that right there. That was subdivision surface. These gears over here were done using a cylinder with just some simple extrusions. Oh, you want me to show you the C4D file? Okay, hold on a second. Let me see if I can... give me just a second, guys, and I'll pull up the file and I'll show it to you. Okay, that's not it. Let me see if I can... see if I can find this here. Let's see. Apex, that's not it. All right, give me just a moment and let me see If I can find this, hang on a minute, let me, I gotta find where the file is at, so give me just a moment here. Okay, that was the GoBox MXL updated. Okay, I think that's going to be it right there. Okay, that might be it. Yeah, I think that's it. So hang on a minute. I seem to have lost my chat window. Hang on just a minute, guys. I got to pull the chat window back up here. I accidentally clicked off the chat window, so let me bring that back up, and then I'll run through some of the stuff with you guys and show it to you. All right, let me pull the chat back up. It's taking forever to pull this up for some reason. Okay, so there's the chat window. All right, and okay, so all right, so the renderer was V-Ray. Yes, all of this was rendered in V-Ray. And let me just jump out of the camera for a moment, and I can show you guys. Basically, this is just a very large, let me turn off the grid. All right, so this is basically just a very large warehouse type of environment with some CNC machines and a floor. And then the table sits right here in the middle of it. And this is basically just a bunch of random different things that you might see inside of a CNC mill. We've got some shafts, some gearing. You got some bearings sitting over here. You've got this cog pulley system right here that's sitting there. You've got these papers that are sitting with some drafting notes and stuff on it. And the notebook, let me pull that up for you real quick. So the notebook, everything was modeled subdivision model style for the notebook. And you can see here, everything was modeled that way, everything on the back. Now the really cool thing is you can't really see the back. Let me turn the textures off and maybe you can see the back, what the back looks like. The back took me a while to model because it's got these really odd looking fins on the back of it. So the whole the entire back of this had to be modeled as well. So that's all subdivision surface modeling as well. And of course it's got the little holes back here for the ports, for the Ethernet and the HDMI and all that kind of stuff. It's got the vents on the side with the vent system there for the cooling, the heat sink on the side, USB ports. So all this stuff had to be modeled like that. So you can see how it was all subdivision surface modeled. And this thing here, that had to be subdivision surface modeled as well. And you can see there what that looks like. Just basic subdivision surface modeling on a lot of this stuff. Yes, the trend in gaming notebooks, huge vents. Yes. Yes, I've noticed that as well. A lot of these new notebooks that are coming out have really big vents on them and fins and stuff like that. Now this gear here on the outside, This particular gear here, I started off with a plain object in order to create the outside gearing, because you can see the gear has little teeth in it with some grooves. And I used that plain object, I rotated it on its side, and then used the MoGraph cloner to clone it around in a circle, and then just connected all of it together. And then after that, I went back and just kind of went in and cleaned it up a little bit and made some adjustments to it. And then the inside part is basically sub-D modeling for the inside of this with all these bolt holes. You've got the holes here for the bolts and on the inside as well. So all of that was sub-D modeling. The gear shaft over here, that was just a cylinder with a lot of subdivisions in it. And I just basically made some bevels on it to kind of smooth it out a little bit. Made some rotations in those extrusions just to kind of twist them around, kind of like the gearing shaft, like in a transmission or something. So that's part of that there. Also, something else that I recently did, which let me pull that up real quick for you. Let me find it really quick on here. Where is it at? Okay, here we go. This might take just a minute to open because this is a really large file. So give me just a minute here while this loads. Yeah, I have done quite a bit of modeling tutorials. So you'll have to go through my channel and check out the playlist for all the modeling tutorials. There's also some stuff on there on V-Ray as well. Okay, so this here is a GPU rendering unit made by the company that I did that notebook for. This is one of their recent projects that I completed for them a while back. And let's see, okay, the texture should be on it. Okay, so let's go back a little bit here in the timeline, and I'll just kind of pan around and show it to you. All right, so this is one of their GPU units. So here in the front, it's got a dual processor motherboard. It's got 2 Xeons in it. The RAM is there. You can see the RAM sits there on the board. Back here, it's got 8 GPUs in it. And originally what they had sent me, they wanted to showcase 8 Quadro P6000s in it. So we started off with P6000s, and then another version has Titans. I think it's the GeForce GTX 1080 Titan, I think is what it is. It had 8 Titans in it. That's another version of this that they make. So this is, let's see. This project right now is, let's see, polygons is 10 million. So this has 10.5 million polygons in it. But when they first sent me the CAD file of just the frame, so what they did was I had to go through here and add all the components to it. They basically just sent me the CAD file, which was the frame, the supports, the power supplies, and the cables and stuff like that for it. And that file was almost 20 million polygons. So I had to go through it, excuse me. I had to go through the file and do a lot of cleaning up on it to reduce it down finally to about 10.5 million. How much time to model it? Okay, well, the frame part of it, which you see here, selected the outside part of the frame and the front portion, all that, the cables, the power supplies. I'll tell you what, let me start from the beginning of this animation and I'll show it to you. So basically what you see there is an empty frame, and that's basically what they sent to me. So I didn't have to model any of that, but all of the components and stuff I had to model. That took me a while to do it. I'd say probably I worked on it for about a week. Okay, what is that? That's R20. There's an import CAD feature that will make things easier with this kind of files. Oh, Okay, I didn't know that. Well, then maybe R20 is something I need to look into, because they had to send me a FBX file, I think is what they originally sent me. So basically what you've got here is, this is just an empty frame, and this is what they sent to me, and I had to spend about a week or so putting all the components on the inside and setting all of that up. So you've got the power supplies that go into the front, and you've got the cables, which I had to rig the cables to go into the power supplies. You've got the motherboard, which will host the 2 Xeon CPUs. You've got the RAM that comes in. You've got the 2 heat sinks with the fans. The cooling system sits in the middle here. You've got some nice fans that sit in the middle. You got the GPUs that drop in on the 2 boards on the back. You've got other PCI Express slots for your Quadro sinks and whatever you want to put along the rear. Now for the hard drives, they have a hard drive tray here that slides in. And I'll tell you what, to make this easier to see, I'm going to turn off the textures. So you can see the hard drive tray comes down, and you've got some hard drive trays that slide in right here on the front. And each one of these, I think, will hold 1 or 2 SSDs. So you've got those trays that slide in, and then it goes down, and you've got another tray that slides in. This one slides in from the front, and this one will hold up to 6 SSDs. So these trays slide in, and I'm just kind of going through this really slow so you can see it. Let me see if I can turn on ambient occlusion for okay, there we go. Now we can get a little shading in there. So those trays slide in. All of this had to be animated. I had to go through and clean up a lot of this CAD stuff and kind of go in and model some of the features, because the CAD model was really messed up in some areas. So they got another tray that comes down, and this here holds the 7200 RPN drives there. And then you got the stuff on the front. You got the ports and stuff on the rear. And then this just shows the machine sitting off here to the side. And then it comes back in. So that is something that I recently done. This was all rendered with V-Ray, by the way, which I don't know if this particular company has released the video for it or not. I think they did. But this took approximately 1 week to render this entire animation. So you can see down here in the timeline, it's got, let's see, it's got a little over 1900 frames. So pretty close to 2000 frames rendering on 2 machines, which is this main machine here. You can see I've got 88 threads running at 2.2 gigahertz and 64 gigabytes of RAM. Also, I'm running a Render Pro, which is 40 threads at 2.5 gigahertz, 16 gigabytes of RAM. On these 2 machines here, it took 1 week to render out those 2000 frames using V-Ray at 1080p to render out that animation using V-Ray. It needs 4 power cables. Yes, that's because it's got 4 power supplies in it. The power supplies run the motherboard plus the boards in the back for the GPUs, because basically you've got a bunch of hard drives, you've got 2 Xeon CPUs, plus any PCI slots you want to have occupied or on the board. Plus you've got the fans, plus you've got 2 boards sitting in the rear that house or that will accumulate 4 cards each. So that's going to require a lot of power. So you basically have 4 of those, you got 4 of those slim power supplies here in the front that power all of this all together when everything is occupied. When the whole entire system is full, you're going to need probably all 4 of those running to power the entire system. Yeah, the electricity bill. Yeah, exactly. Rest in peace. Yeah, exactly. Let's see. Can you go through the material stuff? Okay. I was actually thinking about making a video tutorial about the V-Ray materials, because Let me just show you a little quick example here. Let me turn the material and stuff back on. Okay, so in one part of this video, and it's going to be right about here, if I were to, oh, hang on, let me stop. Yes, let me stop that. Okay, hang on just a second. Let me stop this. I hit the wrong button. Okay, so if I were to go into the render settings and in the V-Ray bridge, okay, so let's say 1x6 and 6 here for the V-Ray options here for the anti-aliasing. If I were to render this little portion here on the inside, and this might take a minute to render this, so give it just a second. You're going to notice that with these render settings, it's going to be very grainy and very blotchy and noisy. This is part of the problem with V-Ray, is that it doesn't really handle reflections, especially diffused metal materials on the inside, very well, unless you really ramp up the settings. The latest 3.6 V-Ray, no, this is 3.4. I was going to upgrade over to 3.6, but they want you to pay to upgrade. And I don't know why. They want you to pay. And I was like, I don't really want to pay, because I don't really know if 3.6 has anything in it that would be worth upgrading over 3.4. All right, so hopefully you guys can see this, but this corner here of this unit, you can see how the metal shader is very noisy and very, very grainy. So in order to fix this issue, you have to really ramp up the subdivision on here, and you have to ramp up in small increments on the minimum shading rate. And then if you render it again, it looks better, but it still has noise in it. So you have to, when you're dealing with V-Ray, especially with the metal stuff, especially the diffused metal, you really have to play around with it and experiment, and you have to find a happy medium spot, that sweet spot between three different things: the minimum shading rate, the maximum subdivision, and the denoiser. Usually for something like that, it's probably going to take a tutorial to go through to explain it all. Yeah, you didn't pay for the upgrade either? Okay. Yeah, I was thinking about going to 3.6, but I don't know. I mean, I kind of have a choice. I can pay the upgrade to go to V-Ray 3.6, or I can take that money and invest in something else, like maybe Redshift. So, or maybe take the money and invest in upgrading over to R20. You know, so what do? Do I invest in R20? Do I invest in Redshift? Or do I stick with what I have and go to V-Ray 3.6? I don't know. Right now, that's kind of why I'm sticking with what I've got right now for the moment, because I don't really know what I want to invest in. So for the time being, I'm just kind of sticking with R18 and V-Ray 3.4. Do I make all of my material by myself, or do I download it? Yes, I make all of the material myself. All of these materials that you see here, I make all of these myself. Well, actually, I take that back. Some of these materials, like the material here on this motherboard, I had to go online to the motherboard manufacturing website, and usually they have an image of their motherboard, and I just cut that out in Photoshop and use that as a texture. So you can see the render, it turned out a little better, but it's still a little noisy in there, in the corner there. So that's where the denoiser would come in. So you have to go between those. So making a tutorial for the V-Ray material, that would take a while to put something like that together, because there's a lot of stuff to go over to find the sweet spot where the materials look good. Corona is also much faster. Okay, I've never tried Corona. I've heard about it, but I've never tried it, so I don't know anything about it at all. The motherboard looks so complex. How do you model this? Okay, let me show you real quick. Hang on just a second and I'll show you. All right, so I'm going to go to the part where the motherboard comes in. Okay, so here's the motherboard here. So the motherboard itself is basically just an extrude object. It's just it's basically just a spline in the shape of the motherboard, and the motherboard texture is then laid on top. And then I went through and applied all the different objects, like the little memory slots, the little transistors, the capacitors. Here is a screw with the washer. Now the input and output ports, all of these I had to model manually. So you've got this stuff here, and you can see none of this was used with subdivision surface modeling. This was all just really quick and dirty using a bowl to knock out some of these holes and stuff. Then you've got the fins for the cooling. Now the CPU stuff here, this is what came to me in the CAD file. So the CPU, the top portion here, the base, that was all done in the CAD file that came to me. But the CPU itself, I modeled the CPU and put the texture on it. The motherboard texture, I did that. That's basically it. But for all these little parts of the motherboard, you can see in the texture like all the little metal parts and all the little circuitry and all these little slots and stuff that are running through it. I don't actually model any of that. What I do is I use a bump map. So here's the texture for the motherboard. And you can see here, there's the texture for the motherboard there. And up in the specular, I've got it in specular. I've got the bump map turned off right now. But basically, you would take this image and you would desaturate it and then put it in the bump. And it would actually... excuse me, it would actually give you the bumping for all of these little things to make it look like they were modeled into it, but it would just be faked with a bump map. So that's that particular machine there. Let's see, what else? There is, I used to do a lot of mobile devices like phones for Verizon Wireless and different things like that. Let me see if I can find one of those phones really quick. Give me just a second, guys. I'm going to be looking through my files to see if I can find one of the phones here. Okay, so this is a phone that I did a long time ago. Let me see if this is the one that I'm thinking of. I'm going to turn the textures off really quick. All right, so this was a phone for Verizon Wireless that I modeled a few years ago. And This was all done using subdivision surface modeling. And if I turn the textures back on, and I'll just turn this back on here. Make a rocket, and you can have some fire stuff in 3 holes. How do you make it? Which one are you talking about? What fire in the rocket are you talking about? Are you talking about on the Behance gallery where that I linked to in the chat? Is that what you're talking about? Okay, hang on just a second. Let me look that up. Okay, so you're talking about, let's see. Oh, you're talking about the space shuttle. Okay. The space shuttle, the fire was done with Photoshop. The fire out of the 2 main white boosters on the side, I tried to do that with Turbulence FD, but unfortunately I could not get it to look right. Hang on. Let me see if I can find that file and I'll show it to you. But the space shuttle was rendered with V-Ray. Mobile looks really nice. Thank you. See if I can find that shuttle file really quick, and I'll show it to you. How to start modeling a mobile. Any tips? Yeah, the first thing is make sure that if you're going to start modeling a mobile device like a phone, make sure you've got good images of it. Orthographic style images like from the back, the top, the bottom, the right, the sides, all that kind of stuff. Make sure you've got a lot of that. And I would watch some of my subdivision modeling tutorials here on YouTube. Those will give you some good tips on what to do. Maybe I can put together a tutorial on modeling a mobile device, because some of these phones can be pretty complex. And it's one thing to learn how to model a hole, but when you have to model a hole around a corner in a bend where a USB port sits right on the other side of it, that can be a little tricky. So maybe I can do something like that. Maybe I can put together a tutorial or something like that on doing a phone. You make a mobile and it's messed up. Yeah, one of the very first times I ever modeled a mobile device, it was a phone. And the guy contacted me and he said he wanted to hire me to model a phone. And this is back when I first started. And that's how I had to learn how to do sub-D modeling, because the phone I tried to model, I used an extrude NURB for it. And that thing was a mess. So I can understand how if you try to model and it's messed up. Will I do more live streaming in the future? Yes, I would like to. Right now it only says there's 10 people watching. Actually now it just went to 11. So perhaps, yes, maybe in the future, maybe I can do some more live streaming. This was my first attempt at doing it. So I hope that the audio quality and the video quality has been good for you guys, that you've been able to watch without any problems, and you've been able to hear me without any problems. So yes, definitely I would like to do some more live streaming in the future. It's 5 a.m. now, yeah. Well, it's midnight here where I'm at, so it won't be long before I go to bed. All right, so let me see if I can find... Okay, here we go. Let me find my space shuttle. You wanted to see the space shuttle, so let me find the file for you real quick. And I'll show it to you. Okay, so this was all rendered inside of V-Ray. These are all V-Ray materials. And basically what I have here is a space shuttle model that I did. Let me zoom in here to it. Okay, so this is the space shuttle model. This was all modeled by me. This took me a while to do all of this. And you can see I've got... it took me a while to model the engines in the rear, the boosters and everything, the tank. It has a very basic interior to it. You can see the interior, very basic. So that's that, and I basically just used the sun, the physical sky to render it. And I'll just render this here for you really quick. And there is a light down at the bottom. That's what's causing that orange glow here at the bottom. I've got a yellow light down at the bottom that's pointing upward. So that would mimic the light coming from the fire. And then I took this image into Photoshop. Do I use brute force GI or irradiance map? Usually what I like to use... let's say you create, let's just say that I create a new scene file and I go over to V-Ray and you go over into the indirect illumination tab. If you turn it on, I don't use any presets. I just leave the preset blank. And for the primary engine, I use brute force, and the secondary engine, I use light cache. So far, out of all the animations and the renders that I've done, that is the setup that I use for it. The primary is brute force, secondary is light cache. And I don't worry about using any of the presets. So anyway, that was a shuttle file. So I took the shuttle over into Photoshop and I just put in the fire with some blur in Photoshop to kind of fake it. All right, so I'm going to close that out. And I'm going to close out the phone file. And the GX8, I'm going to go ahead and close that out. I don't think anybody has any more questions about that, so I'm going to go ahead and close it. And the notebook scene, I'm going to go ahead and close that too. All right, guys. Well, I think I'm going to go ahead and end this live stream. It's getting late here. It's already after midnight, and I've been going now for almost 2.5 hours. So I think that this has gone better than what I thought it was going to be, considering this is my first live stream. So thank you to the 11 people that decided to watch. I appreciate it. And I definitely want to do some more of these in the future. So hopefully there'll be some more people in here watching and chatting. So I hope everybody has a good night. And those of you that are over on the other side of the planet where it is now 9 a.m., I hope you guys have a good morning. And yeah, thanks, man, for taking the time for this. I would love to see more. Well, you're very welcome. And definitely we'll see more. I hope to have some more tutorials coming soon on the modeling and to do some more live streams like this. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thanks, guys, for being a part of my very first live stream. Thanks for being here. And good night to everyone. And I will see you guys in the next video.